Ever since I bought my Honda CRF250L back in 2021, there hasn't been a single new bike release that made me think, this could be my next bike. Until now. This is the brand new Suzuki DR-Z4S, a complete redesign of one of the most beloved Dualsports ever made. The engine has been updated to finally be Euro compliant again, it rocks fully adjustable KYB suspension and has a modern cockpit that is characterized by its divisive Cyclops headlight. Although right now, it's more reminiscent of Sloth from the Goonies. So let's go inside and I'll show you what happened. The original DR-Z was on my shortlist of bikes when I was in the process of buying one, but they haven't been sold in Europe since 2009, so they're kind of hard to find. Well, in good condition anyway. So when Suzuki announced the return of this legendary Dualsport icon, I knew I had to try it. Now, before we dive into the accident, there's a bit of background you need to know about off-roading here in the Netherlands. The Trans-Euro Trail is pretty much the only legal off-roading we have over here. But since our country is as flat as a pancake, it doesn't get more exciting than this. So riders who seek a bit more challenge enroll in enduro events called OTRs, which literally just stands for off the road. These events run from September to March and combine farm fields with single tracks, sand pits, motocross tracks and obstacles. The vast majority of the field rides enduro bikes or quads, but due to the popularity of adventure riding, there's an increasing number of bigger bikes as well. You'll see Dualsports, 890s, T7s, GS's. Hell, I even saw a guy on an e-bike and a moped once. I've ridden 11 of these events on my CRF250L so far. It gets the job done and honestly better than you'd expect, but there's definitely room for improvement.
Come on, buddy. It's crazy. Like, I'm giving it full throttle in second gear. This is just so soft and deep.
So not entirely coincidental, there was an OTR in the week that I had this demo bike. So I asked Suzuki if I could take it and they agreed, which I honestly think is really cool of them. Coming into this event there were 3 things I was hoping the DR-Z would offer. A better ability to plow through thick dirt and deep sand, well spaced out gears for trail riding, and a bit more tractor factor for low speed technical trails. So did the DR-Z deliver? Yes, and on more fronts than I expected. But I'd be lying if I said that the bike and I immediately got along.
Alright guys, we are off on the brand new Suzuki DR-Z400, or DR-Z4S I should say.
Right out of the start gate, I noticed that the DR-Z keeps its line way better than my CRF, which I largely attribute to the better suspension.
Oh, into the bog.
But the second thing I noticed is that the engine is way less forgiving in low RPMs.
Whoa.
And that took some getting used to.
Let's get used to the tight stuff a little. Okay. Fuck. Fuck. The clutch is a bit more unforgiving than I'm used to from the CRF, but I'm starting to like get the feel for how I should handle it, and now it's actually like quite nice. The clutch feel is super light on this bike. That's super nice, especially in this stuff. And what I've also noticed is that it is quite a bit taller, so I can definitely notice like when I want to dab a leg, I'm reaching for the ground a little. I'm like 175, so I'm pretty short.
That's not a huge issue when you're riding, but as soon as you mess up on the trail, not being able to put your foot down can quickly turn a small hiccup into a bigger one. The main difficulty for me was to quickly recover from my mistakes and get going again, which led to some awkward situations where I was holding everyone up.
Alright.
Of course, this can easily be fixed with a lowering link, and I'm curious if Suzuki will release a lowered model themselves, like Honda did with the CRF300 LS.
In those corners, that's where you like kind of notice like the seat height really being a bit taller than the CRF. It's definitely a bit more difficult to save it when you get off the packs. Like obviously the aftermarket will make like a lowering link for it and everything, so it becomes a bit more suitable to like small guys to me. But I'm not sure if I would want that, because the lowering link does mean you get like less ground clearance, and The ground clearance on this thing is kind of nice. The riding itself, I think the seat height is pretty manageable. It's just in the like clumsy situations where you're gonna notice it. What the hell?
While the seat height took some getting used to, I really like the geometry of this bike.
On this side, this bike's absolutely amazing.
You sit on top of it, not in it, if that makes sense.
It just gives me a much more, kind of like an active stance, I would say.
On my CRF, I've always felt a little crouch while standing, but on the DR-Z, I naturally felt in a much better attack position. This bike just feels switched on and ready to rip.
Oh yeah, baby! We are becoming friends now.
Now, I'm by no means saying that I rip, but at the end of the first lap, I was starting to feel much more comfortable on the bike. And halfway the second, I felt like I made a new friend.
Oh, in this stuff, this bike is so awesome. Whoa!
I had found the friction point of the clutch.
You can just feel like the second gear like coming in.
Managed to carry more speed through the corners.
Outside to the inside.
And didn't stall the bike nearly as often.
I feel like I'm riding better now on this bike than I normally do on my CRF. And this is like basically my first day on it, because I did like one day of like test riding, but that is just like, you know, just some backcountry roads. Nothing very exciting. And I'm already feeling way more comfortable on this bike off-road. Not that I don't feel comfortable on the CRF, but this is just... Wow, tight. But yeah, I'm loving this bike. Obviously there's always like a kind of like, you know, like shiny new bike feeling, but it's hard to deny that this bike is not a better off-road bike than the CRF.
What did you say?
It just is, really.
The suspension on this bike is great, and personally I wouldn't feel the need to change it. It is fully adjustable, and for this event I stiffened up the fork a little. In hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have, but we'll get into that.
Yo, I'm digging the suspension, by the way. This feels really nice. The suspension feels so predictable in these whoops. Like I kind of know like when to drop my weight down to kind of like absorb it, and it's just like the same every time.
I think the most important thing to notice here is that even without optimal settings, it performed well and saved me from several mistakes.
Whoa! Suspension handles it well though. Like I came into the swoops like a bit, I don't know, a bit wrong. But the suspension doesn't buck you over or anything.
This event had a lot of tight single tracks. And while I'd probably change the gearing slightly if this were my own bike, the second and third gear felt very well spaced out.
Oh.
On the CRF, you have to change the gearing quite drastically to ride these trails well, but the DR-Z works pretty good as it is. Now let's talk about power and torque. The throttle response is quite smooth, way less jerky than the CRF, and the power curve feels very linear. As soon as you open the throttle, it starts to pull and keeps cooling consistently.
Oh, the thing pulls like a dream. Oh, bit over. Whoa! In this stuff, this bike is so awesome. It has like, when you hit the throttle, you just have like immediate power. With the CRF, you kind of have to get the rest up to like get the power kicking in and get it in the power band. But here, it just has it down low and back in. Take the rut. Oh. This bike just eats.
In a recent review of my CRF, I said I don't need much more power than that. While that is still true, I do have to say that the extra torque and power of this bike felt great and will be helpful in a lot of situations.
Whoa! It still has so much to give, like extra and forward.
The bike simply has more to give without feeling much more intimidating.
Oh, super tight.
By the way, in that same video, I also said that more power would likely get me into more trouble.
Mannen, bedankt hè!
In all fairness though, this wasn't a power issue. I'm not 100% sure what caused the tank slapper, but I've narrowed it down to two possible causes, maybe a combination of them. I think either the front tire was kicked out of balance by a rod or a rock, or the suspension settings were off. I'm thinking of doing a deep dive into this topic, so let me know in the comments if that's something you're interested in.
Goed. Oh ja, kom aan. Kom. Maar doe rustig aan, hè?
Yeah. A huge thanks to the organizers of the event, who really did a bang-up job, and especially to Siska and the two crew members who shuttled me back to my van and made sure I got home okay. So just to give you guys an idea of the damage, as you can see the headlight has completely came off and the dashboard has kind of like popped out. It just came completely loose. I still have it, it's in my van, but yeah, it's wrecked as well. I don't think it's working anymore. Then of course the handlebar is super bent, the handguard is bent, this side cover has ripped, and the front fender has ripped on one side, which has caused it to be crooked like this. So, and what surprised me the most is that even the key is super bent. So yeah, quite a bit of damage. I'm going to bring it to Suzuki tomorrow for repairs, and then we'll take it from there. Now, before we continue, I just want to stress that there's no one who feels worse about this crash than I do. This is the first time I got to ride a demo bike. It was super cool of Suzuki to let me take it to such an event, and this is absolutely not how I wanted this to go. So the only reason I feel free to talk about it like this is because Suzuki has been great in dealing with the situation. Their rep seemed more concerned with my well-being than the bike, and he basically just said like, hey, this is what these bikes are built for, so this is where they should be tested, which I honestly think is really cool and deserves some recognition. Also, I've kind of walked away unscathed, which is just a reminder to always wear all the gear. It definitely paid off big time for me in this case. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the missing sixth gear. I totally understand why people want it. I used to ride 2 hours to and from the trail, so I know it can be a miserable experience. But still, personally, I couldn't care less. If better off-road performance comes at the cost of a sixth gear, that's a trade I'll happily make. Besides, with the drastic gearing changes needed on the CRF to make it any good off-road, I strongly doubt the DR-Z will perform worse on the highway. I would have loved to test this, but yeah. The bike comes with ride modes and traction control, and there's a very noticeable difference between the modes. In B mode, the power comes on a lot more mellow than in A mode, and with traction control set to gravel, the rear didn't break out once. But as soon as I switched to A mode with traction control turned off, the rear wanted to break out all of the time.
Ooh, oh. Wow, this thing really does break traction. That's cool because on the CRF I could never do things like power slides and things like that, which of course are completely unnecessary but totally cool. But this bike will definitely do that.
For the most part, I'd probably just leave the bike in ride mode A, which is the most aggressive mode, with traction control turned off. But I do actually see a use case for the mellower modes as well. On the Trans-Europe Trail, you can have these like super long stretches of gravel roads, and after a while I always kind of get like tired of them and I lose focus a little. And I feel like in those types of scenarios, the ride modes can come in very useful to, just tune the bike down a bit and mitigate some risks. I also like that the ABS can be completely turned off. On my CRF I can only disable the rear, and I've had a few like muddy and steep descents where the front ABS would kick in, and for some reason that always ends with the tires up in the air. There's one more controversial topic we need to address, and that is the price. There has been a lot of backlash about the price tag of this bike. Now, I'm not that well versed in like price ranges for motorcycles, but from where I sit, it doesn't seem that crazy. If you consider that a 2025 CRF 300L costs 7,300 euros here in the Netherlands. And to get it up to par with the DR-Z, you would need to invest at least 1,500 euros in better suspension, and then another 1,000 euros in performance mods, and still it will be nowhere near as good as the DR-Z. So, would I have liked the bike to be cheaper? Of course, but does it seem like batshit crazy? For me, not really, but I mean, it's still a lot of money, of course, but yeah. So usually reviews end with a conclusion of like who this bike is for or if it's worth the money. I don't feel experienced enough to make those kind of recommendations, so instead I'll just say this. If I were to buy a new bike right now, this bike will be on the top of my list. Now there is actually another bike that is a close second. I still need to test it, but if you like and subscribe, I'll tell you all about it in the next video. Now, I just want to say that I quite like the Cyclops headlight of this bike. I think it looks pretty cool, and it definitely puts like the bold in like bold new graphics. But having said that, can you imagine how sick this bike would look with a rally tower on it? That would look fire for sure. So if I ever were to get one, I would probably do this modification.